Chapter 2 Biological Classification. Since the dawn of civilization, there have been many attempts to classify living organisms. It was done instinctively, not using criteria that were scientific, but born out of need to use organisms for our own use, for food, shelter, and clothing. Aristotle was the earliest to attempt a more scientific basis of classification. He used simple morphological characters to classify plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. He also divided animals into two groups, those which had red blood and those that did not. In Linnaeus' time, a two-kingdom classification with Plantae and Animalia kingdoms was developed that included all plants and animals respectively. This system did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes, unicellular and multicellular, and photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic organisms. Classification of organism into plant and animal was easily done and was easy to understand, but a large number of organisms did not fall into either category. Hence, the two-kingdom classification used for a long time was found inadequate. Besides the gross morphology, a need was also felt for including more characteristics like cell structure, nature of wall, mode of nutrition, habitat, method of reproduction, evolutionary relationships, etc. Classification system for living organisms and hence undergone several changes over time. Though plants and animal kingdoms have been a constant under all the different systems, the understanding of what groups organisms be included under these kingdoms have been changing. The number and nature of other kingdoms have also been understood differently by different scientists over the time. Table 2.1 Characteristics of Five Kingdoms. R. H. Whitaker, 1969, proposed a five-kingdom classification. The kingdoms defined by him were named Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. The main criteria for the classification used by him included cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationships. Table 2.1 gives a comparative account of different characteristics of the five kingdoms. The three-domain system has also been proposed that divided the kingdom Monera into two domains, leaving the remaining eukaryotic kingdoms in the third domain and thereby a six-kingdom classification. You will learn about this system in detail at higher classes. Let us look at the five-kingdom classification to understand the issues and considerations that influence the classification system. Earlier, classification system included bacteria, blue-green algae, fungi, mosses, ferns, gymnosperms, and the angiosperms under plants. The character that unified this whole kingdom was that all the organisms included had a cell wall in their cells. This placed together groups which widely differed other characteristics. It brought together the prokaryotic bacteria and the blue-green algae with other groups which were eukaryotic. It also grouped together the unicellular organisms and the multicellular organisms once. Say for example, Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra were placed together under algae. The classification did not differentiate between heterotrophic group fungi and autotrophic green plants, though they showed a characteristic different in wall composition. The fungi had chitin in their walls, while the green plants have cellulosic cell wall. When such characteristics were considered, the fungi was placed in a separate kingdom, kingdom fungi. All prokaryotic organisms were grouped together under kingdom Monera, and the unicellular eukaryotic organisms were placed in kingdom Protista. Kingdom Protista had brought together Chlamydomonas, Chlorella with Paramecium and Amoeba. It has put together organisms which in earlier classification were placed in different kingdoms. This happened because the criteria for classification changed. This kind of changes will take place in future too, depending on the improvement in our understanding of characteristics and evolutionary relationships. Over time, an attempt has been made to evolve a classification system which reflects not only the morphological, physiological, and reproductive similarities, but is also phylogenetic, that is, it is based on evolutionary history. In this chapter, we will study characteristics of kingdom Monera, Protista, fungi of the Whitaker system of classification. The kingdom Plantae and Animalia, commonly referred to as plants and animals kingdom, respectively, will be dealt separately in the chapter 3 and 4. 2.1 Kingdom Monera. Bacteria are the sole members of kingdom Monera. They are the most abundant microorganisms. Bacteria occur almost everywhere. Hundreds of bacteria are present in a handful of soil. They also live in extreme habitats such as hot springs, deserts, snow, and deep oceans where very few other living forms can survive. Many of them live on other organisms as parasites. Bacteria are grouped under 4 categories based on their shape: the spherical coccus, the rod-shaped bacillus, the comma-shaped vibrio, and the spiral spirillum. Though the bacterial structure is very simple, they are complex in behavior. Compared to many other organisms, bacteria are as a group show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Some of the bacteria are autotrophic, that is, they synthesize their own food for inorganic substrate. They may be photosynthetic autotrophic or chemosynthetic autotrophic. The vast majority of bacteria are heterotrophs, that is, they depend on other organisms or on dead organic matter for food. Archaebacteria. These bacteria are special since they live in some of the most harsh habitats such as extreme salty areas, halophiles, hot springs, thermoacidophiles, and marshy areas, methanogens. Archaebacteria differ from other bacteria in having a different cell wall structure, and this feature is responsible for their survival in extreme conditions. Methanogens are present in the gut of several ruminant animals such as cows and buffaloes, and they are responsible for the production of methane, biogas from the dung of these animals. Eubacteria. There are thousands of different eubacteria or true bacteria. They are characterized by the presence of rigid cell wall and, if motile, a flagellum. The cyanobacteria, also referred to as blue-green algae, have chlorophyll A, similar to green plants, and are photosynthetic autotrophs. The cyanobacteria are unicellular, colonial or filamentous, freshwater or marine or terrestrial algae. The colonies are generally surrounded by gelatinous sheath. They often form blooms in polluted waters. Some of these organisms can fix atmospheric nitrogen in the specialized cell called heterocyst, example nostoc and anabina. Chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria oxidize various inorganic substances such as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia and use the released energy for their ATP production. They play a great role in recycling nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Heterotrophic bacteria are most abundant in nature. The majority are important decomposers. Many of them have a significant impact on human affairs. They are helpful in making curd from milk, production of antibiotics, fixing of nitrogen in legume, roots, etc. Some are pathogens, causing damage to human beings, crops, farm animals, and pets. Cholera, typhoid, tetanus, citrus canker, as well as known disease caused by different bacteria. Bacteria reproduce mainly by fission. Sometimes under unfavorable conditions they produce spores. They also reproduce by a sort of sexual reproduction by adopting a primitive type of DNA transfer from one bacterium to other. The mycoplasma are organisms that are completely lack a cell wall. They are the smallest living cells known and can survive without oxygen. Many mycoplasmas are pathogenic in animals and plants. Kingdom Protista. All single-cell eukaryotes are placed under Protista, but the boundaries of this kingdom are not well defined. What may be a photosynthetic protist to one biologist may be the plant to. In this book, we include chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, phyllonodes, and protozoans under Protista. Members of Protista are primarily aquatic. This kingdom forms a link with the others dealing with plants, animals, and fungi. Being eukaryotic, the protist cell body contains a well-defined nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Some have flagella or cilia. Protists reproduce asexually and sexually by a process involving cell fusion and zygote formation. 2.2.1 Chrysophytes. This group includes diatoms and golden algae, dasmids. They are found in fresh water as well as in marine environment. They are microscopic and float passively in water currents, planktons. Most of them are photosynthetic. In diatom, the cell wall form two thin overlapping shells which fit together as in soap box. The walls are embedded with silica and thus the walls are indestructible. Thus, diatoms have left behind large amount of cell wall deposits in their habitats. The accumulation over billions of years is referred to as diatomaceous earth. Being gritty, this soil is used in polishing, filtration of oil and syrups. Diatoms are the chief producers in ocean. Dinoflagellates. These organisms are mostly marine and photosynthetic. They appear yellow, green, brown, blue or red depending on the main pigments present in their cells. The cell wall have stiff cellulosic plates on the outer surface. Most of them have two flagella. One lies longitudinally and the other transversely in the furrow between the wall plates. Very often, red dinoflagellates exhibit granulomas. Under such rapid multiplication, they make the sea appear red tides. Toxin released by such large number may even kill other marine animals such as fishes. Euglenoids. Majority of them are freshwater organisms found in stagnant water. Instead of a cell wall, they have a protein-rich layer called pellicle which makes their body flexible. They have two flagella, a short and one large. Though they are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight, when deprived of sunlight, they behave like heterotrophs by predating on other small organisms. Interestingly, the pigments of euglenoids are identical to those of higher plants. Example, euglena. Slime molds. Slime molds are saprophytic protists. The body moves along decaying twigs and leaves, engulfing organic material. Under suitable conditions, they form an aggregation called plasmodium which may grow and spread over several feet. During unfavorable conditions, the plasmodium differentiates into forms fruiting bodies bearing spores at their tips. The spores possess true walls. They are extremely resistant and survive for many years, even under adverse conditions. The spores are dispersed by air currents. Protozoans. All protozoans are heterotrophs and live as predators or parasites. They are believed to be primitive relatives of animals. There are four major groups of protozoans. Amoeboid protozoan. These organisms live in freshwater, seawater and moist soil. They move and capture their prey by putting out pseudopodia as in amoeba. Marine forms have silica shells on the surface. Some of them, such as entamoeba, are parasites. Flagellated protozoans. These members of the group are either free-living or parasite. They have flagella. The parasitic form cause diseases such as sleeping sickness. Example, trypanosoma. Ciliated protozoans. These are aquatic, actively moving organisms because of the presence of thousands of cilia. They have a cavity that opens to the outside of the cell surface. The coordinated movement of rows of cilia causes the water laden with food to be stirred into the gullet. Example, paramecium. Sporozoans. These include diverse organisms that have an infectious spore-like stage in their life cycle. The most notorious is Plasmodium, which causes malaria, a disease which has a staggering effect on human population. Kingdom fungi. The fungi constitute a unique kingdom of heterotrophic organisms. They show a great diversity in morphology and habitat. You have seen fungi on a moist bread and rotten fruits. The common mushroom you eat and the toadstools are also fungi. White spots seen on mustard leaves and due to parasite fungus. Some unicellular fungi, example yeast, are used to make bread and beer. Other fungi cause disease in plants and animals. Yeast rust cause Puccinia is an important example. Some are the source of antibiotics, example penicillium. Fungi are cosmopolitan and occur in air, water, soil and on animals and plants. They prefer to grow in warm and humid places. Have you ever wondered why we keep food in refrigerator? Yes, it is to prevent food from going bad due to the bacterial or fungal infections. With the exception of yeast, which are unicellular, fungi are filamentous. Their body consists of long, slender, thread-like structures called hyphae. The network of hyphae is known as mycelium. Some hyphae are continuous tubes filled with multinucleated cytoplasm. They are called cenocytic hyphae. Others have a septate or cross walls which in the hyphae. The cell walls of fungi are composed of chitin and polysaccharides. Most fungi are heterotrophic and absorb soluble organic matter from dead substances and hence are called saprophytes. Those that depend on living plants and animals are called parasites. They can also live as symbiotics in association with algae as lichens and with roots of higher plants called mycorrhiza. Reproduction in fungi can take place by vegetative means. Fragmentation, fission. Sexual reproduction is by spores called conidia or sporangiospores or zoospores, and sexual reproduction is by oospores, ascospores and basidiospores. The various spores are produced in distinct structures called fruiting bodies. The sexual cycle involves the following three steps. First, fusion of protoplasm between two motile or non-motile gametes called plasmogamy. Second, fusion of two nuclei called karyogamy. Third, meiosis in zygote resulting in haploid spores. When a fungus reproduces sexually, two haploid hyphae of compatible mating types come together and fuse. In some fungi, the fusion of two haploid cells immediately results in diploid cells, 2N. However, in other fungi, an intervening dikaryotic stage occurs. Such a condition is called dikaryon and the phase is called dikaryophase of fungus. Later, the parental nuclei fuse and the cells become diploid. The fungus becomes fruiting bodies in which reduction division occurs, leading to formation of haploid spores. The morphology of the mycelium, mode of spores formation and fruiting bodies form the basis of the division of the kingdom into various classes. First, Phycomycetes. Members of Phycomycetes are found in aquatic habitats and on decaying wood in moist and damp places or as obligate parasite on plants. The mycelium is asexual and cenocytic. Asexual reproduction takes place by zoospores or by aplanospores. These spores are endogenously produced in sporogenesium. These spores are endogenously produced in sporangium. A zygospore is formed by fusion of two gametes. These gametes are similar in morphology or dissimilar. Some common examples are mucus, rhizopus, and albugo. Ascomycetes. Commonly known as sac fungi, the ascomycetes are most multicellular, example penicillium, or rarely unicellular, example yeast. They are saprophytic decomposers, parasites, or coprophilous. Mycelium is branched and septate. The asexual spores are conidia produced exogenously on special mycelium called conidiospores. Conidia on germination produces mycelium. Sexual spores are called ascospores, which are produced endogenously in sac-like asci. These asci are arranged in different types of fruiting bodies called ascocarps. Some examples are Aspergillus, claviceps, and Neurospora. Neurospora is used extensively in biochemical and genetic work. Many members like morels and truffles are edible and are considered as delicacies. Basidiomycetes. Commonly known form of basidiomycetes are mushrooms, fungi, or puffballs. They grow in soil, on logs, trees, stumps, and living plants' bodies as parasites, example rust and spuds. The mycelium is branched and septate. The asexual spores are generally not found, but vegetative reproduction by fragmentation is common. The sex organs are absent, but plasmogamy is brought about by fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes. The resultant structure is dikaryotic, which ultimately gives rise to basidium. Karyogamy and meiosis takes place in the basidium, producing 4 basidiospores. The basidiospores are exogenously produced on the basidium. The basidia are arranged in fruiting bodies called basidiocarp. Some common members are agaricus, Eustelajo, and Puccinia. Deuteromycetes, commonly known as imperfect fungi because only the asexual or vegetative phase of these fungi are known. When the sexual form of these fungi was discovered, they were moved into classes that rightly belong to. It is also possible that asexual and vegetative stage have been given one name and the sexual stage another. Later, when the linkages were established, the fungi were correctly identified and moved out of Deuteromycetes. Once perfect stage of member of Deuteromycetes was discovered, They were often moved to Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes. The Deuteromycetes reproduce only by asexual spores known as conidia. The mycelium is septate and branched. Some members are saprophytes or parasites, while others, large number of them, are decomposers of litter and help in mineral recycling. Some examples are Alternaria, Coleotrichum, and Trichoderma. Kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae includes all eukaryotic chlorophyll-containing organisms commonly known as plants. A few members are partially heterotrophic, such as insectivorous plants or parasites. Bloodwort and Venus flytrap are examples of insectivorous plants, and Cuscuta is a parasite. The plant cells are eukaryotic structure with prominent chloroplast and cell wall mainly made of cellulose. You will study the eukaryotic cell structure in detail in Chapter 8. Plantae includes algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. Life cycle of plant has two distinct phases, the diploid sporophytic and the haploid gametophytic. They alternate with each other. The length of haploid and diploid phases and whether these phases are free living or dependent on others vary among different groups in plants. This phenomena is called alteration of generation. You will study further details of kingdom in Chapter 3. Kingdom Animalia. This kingdom is characterized by heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms that are multicellular and they lack cell walls. They directly or indirectly depend on plant for food. They digest their food in an internal cavity and store food for reserve of glycogen or fat. Their mode of nutrition is holozoic, by ingestion of food. They follow a definite growth pattern and grow in adults that have a definite shape and size. Higher forms show elaborate sensory and neuromotor mechanism. Most of them are capable of locomotion. The sexual reproduction is by copulation of male and female, followed by embryological development. Silent features of various phyla are described in Chapter 4. Viruses, viroids, prions, and lichens. In the 5-kingdom classification of Whittaker, there is no mention of lichens and some acellular organisms like viruses, viroids, and prions. They are briefly introduced here. All of us who have suffered the ill effects of common cold or flu know what effect viruses can have on us. Even if we do not associate it with our condition, viruses did not find a place in classification since they are not considered truly living. If we understand living or those organisms that have a cell structure, the viruses are non-cellular organisms that are characterized by having an inert crystalline structure outside the living cell. Once they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cell to replicate themselves, killing the host. Would you call viruses living or non-living? Viruses mean venom or poisonous fluid. Dmitry Ivanovsky recognized certain microbes as casual organisms of mosaic disease of tobacco. These were found to be similar than bacteria because they pass through bacteria-proof filters. MWB demonstrated that the extract of infected plants of tobacco could cause infection in a healthy plant and named the new pathogen virus and called the fluid as Contagium vivum fluidum. W. M. Stanley showed that viruses could be crystallized and crystals consist largely of proteins. They are inert outside and their specific host cells. Viruses are obligate parasites. In addition to proteins, viruses also contain generic material. They could be either RNA or DNA. No viruses contain both RNA and DNA. A virus is a nucleoprotein and the generic material is infectious. In general, viruses that infect plants have a single-stranded RNA and viruses that infect animals have either single or double-stranded RNA or double-stranded DNA. Bacterial virals or bacteriophages are usually double-stranded DNA viruses. The protein coat called caspase made up of subunits called capsomeres protect the nucleic acid. These capsomeres are arranged in a helical or polyhedral geometric forms. Viruses cause diseases like mumps, smallpox, herpes, and influenza. AIDS in humans is also caused by a virus. In plants, the symptoms that can be mosaic formation, leaf rolling and curling, yellowing and vein clearing, dwarf and stunned growth. Viroids. In 1971, T.O. Diener discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than virus and caused a potato spindle tuber disease. It was found to be a free RNA. It lacked the protein coat and that it found in viruses, hence it is named as viroid. The RNA of viroid was of low molecular weight. Prions. In modern medicine, certain infectious neurological diseases were found to be transmitted by an agent consisting of abnormally folded proteins. The agent was similar in size of to virus. These agents were called prions. The most notable disease caused by prions are BSE, commonly called mad cow disease in cattle, and its analogous variant CJD in humans. Lichens. Lichens are symbiotic associations, that is mutually useful associations between algae and fungi. The alcohol component is known as phycobiont and the fungal component as mycobiont, which are autotrophic and heterotrophic, respectively. Algae prepare food for fungi and fungi provide shelter and absorb mineral, nutrients and water for its partner. So close in their association, there is one saw a lichen in nature, one would never imagine that they had two different organisms within them. Lichen are very good pollution indicators that they do not grow in polluted area. Summary. Biological classification of plants and animals was first proposed by Aristotle on the basis of simple morphological characters. Linnaeus later classified all living organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. Whittaker proposed an elaborative five-kingdom classification, Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. The main criteria of the five-kingdom classification was cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition and reproduction, and phylogenetic relationships. In five-kingdom classification, bacteria are included in kingdom Monera. Bacteria are cosmopolitan in distribution. These organisms show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Bacteria may be autotrophic or heterotrophic in the mode of nutrition. Kingdom Protista includes all single-cellule eukaryotes such as chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime molds, and protozoans. Protists have defined nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. They reproduce both asexually and sexually. Members of kingdom fungi show a great diversity in structure and habitat. Most fungi are saprophytic in their mode of nutrition. They show asexual and sexual reproduction. Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, and Deuteromycetes are the four classes under this kingdom. The Plantae include all eukaryotic chlorophyll-containing organisms. Algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperms, and angiosperms are included in this group. The life cycle of plant exhibit alterations of generation, gametophytic and sporophytic generation. Heterotrophic eukaryotic multicellular organisms lacking a cell wall are included in kingdom Animalia. The mode of nutrition of this organism is holozoic. They reproduce mostly by sexual mode. Some acellular organisms like virus, viroids as well as lichens are not included in the five kingdom classification. Chapter over. Thank you.